Welcome to Your Future in Sales and Marketing, a podcast that helps you make great career decisions to get the most out of your career journey. We'll introduce you to the AXR network of established senior leaders and a handpicked group of future aspiring leaders who have it all in front of them. You'll learn what it's like in the top job and how to get there. Your hosts from AXR's specialist sales and marketing recruitment team will also land bonus episodes for you on how to work with recruiters, write a resume, and smash an interview, as well as our very popular market updates. It's the podcast that has it all. You can't get this career advice anywhere else.
Welcome everyone to Your Future in Sales and Marketing. My name is Mike Dickson, Director of the AXR Sales and Marketing Practice. Today we're joined on the pod by Italian-based Graham Fairbairn, Head of Sales and Marketing for Mutti Pasta Sauces. Welcome, Graham. How are you?
Really good, thank you. I really appreciate getting invited here today. Feels like a career milestone to get invited on the AXR podcast.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I said Italian-based, so we took the opportunity because you're in Sydney. What brings you over?
Just a market visit. I've got 8 markets under my remit and sort of realized a while ago that I'd visited all the other markets twice, but actually hadn't been back to my home market in the 18 months I've been over there. Lots changed, lots still the same, but it's good to be out here and see home again for a little bit.
Brilliant. We're going to explore what your role is as head of sales and marketing for the pasta sauce business in a moment for Mutti. As everyone knows, my favorite client. So lots about Mutti. But let's get to know you a bit better. First of all, Graham, favorite brand, and you can't pick Mutti, obviously.
Favorite brand. Got to say this one for me is IKEA. IKEA is my favorite brand. So you try and find some other proposition that is as universally beloved around the entire world as IKEA. I think you'd struggle to find anyone like that. Just this idea of democratizing furniture with really cheap, simple stuff. You assemble it yourself. The retail experience is exactly the same any other markets you go into. And for someone like myself who's lived in, I think, 10 different countries, it's just that consistency there. I've assembled and disassembled a Malm bed about 1,000 times. You look at any cafe in Sydney, they've got the same IKEA $10 high chair in every single one of them. You just think, what does it take to come up with a proposition and execute it like that? You just don't find that, do you?
Now, a question for you on IKEA. Are the meatballs the same in every country?
The meatballs are the same. Even in Italy.
Really?
They give you a coffee afterwards. That's the difference.
Yeah. Very good, those meatballs.
Can't say no.
So 10 countries, but so where are you from? And give us a bit of a background before we jump into the career piece.
Yeah. So my background, I guess my 15 minutes is I've lived all over the world my whole life. So I was born in Switzerland, then lived in New Zealand, South Africa, Dubai, Switzerland again, then England for undergrad, then Australia, naturalized citizen, then the US for MBA, and back to Australia after that. And then Italy is the latest one. So that's international move number 10. So I get this a lot. If you hear my accent, it's like this ink blot test of different places I've been. You get the clipped South African sentences, the flat Australian vowels, random bits of slang. And I think since I've moved to Italy, is probably a bit more gesticulating as well. But yeah, that's kind of my story. Dad he worked for a pharmaceutical company. And every time they moved him into a new regional role, the family went with them too. Right.
What an interesting background. And you're right. Your accent's hard to pick. It's a bit of everything in there.
Bit of everything, yeah. But I always say I'm Australian, naturalized.
Yeah.
Came here, loved the place, stole an Australian job, stole an Australian wife. And it's the kind of place where you can come as a foreigner, as you would know, and become a local.
Yeah.
But most of the other places I've lived, you're always just a little bit on the outer there, and that's okay. But it's nice to have a place you can call home.
Fantastic. So let's get into your journey. We're going to start at uni because I'm just curious. You went to Oxford Uni, one of the best unis in the world. Wadham College, am I saying that correctly?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Great. So what was that experience like?
It was an amazing experience. So I was living in Switzerland at the time, and I guess decision number one was, where do you go to study? In the UK was kind of a well-trod path for that kind of thing. Did a university trip to see a variety of UK universities and just fell in love with Oxford. It is such an inspiring place. You can feel thousands of years of academic weight all around you, the old buildings, the rowing. So I kind of thought that this was something, I really wanted to do, and did the application, the interview, got the grades and headed on over. And just had a really wonderful 3 years there. I remember my first year there, just walking around, just thinking, how did I get here? This is This is so much fun. Shouldn't be allowed.
I guess it's probably a bit of imposter syndrome for a lot of people at a place like that, because it's been there, centuries before you and will be there centuries after you.
Yeah, that's right. There's a bit of a theme through a lot of this of the admissions mistake, which everyone feels when they go to a place like that. But then you just realize you're here, make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you graduated from Oxford, is the world your oyster? Is the world beating a path to your door?
No, is a short version. So when I was at Oxford, I studied philosophy, politics, and economics because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And this was something that kind of gave you a little bit of breadth. It was for people who either wanted to go into government or just wanted to keep some options open for afterwards. So I'd say, you come out of it, Oxford's a very academic bubble. It trains you for a career in academia. And I probably got to the end of it without a big clue of what I wanted to do. So I tried a couple of different things, but short version is I ended up in Australia and found a job advert for a company called Aztec back then, offering consulting. This was consulting for big FMCG clients. I thought, this sounds really important. This sounds like something I could do. And I think for me, the thing that attracted me was the idea of household brands and brands that have a connection with people. Like, because I'd moved around the world my whole life, you have the familiarity with, Omo, the detergents, what my clothes smelled like when I grew up, and Pringles, they taste the same the whole world over. And I thought, okay, this sounds like a world I could get interested in. But was it a shoo-in? No, I mean, there was plenty of jobs outside of that I got rejected, and probably a little bit of tall poppy syndrome in Australia that I wasn't prepped for. But I think the main thing you take out of that is that there is no golden passport. There is no tickets. Like, you get your education, you get the degree, but there's still a lot of hard work in front of you to make that career happen. And it's probably good to learn that at an early age.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Nobody has it easy. Everyone's going to make it happen themselves, no matter, what the presumption is. But that said, into IRI, and you did pretty well. You were promoted quickly within a year, but after a couple of years, you stepped to the client side, as you would say, from in the agency world, into Arnott's. Was that quite a strategic move for you?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of realized in my time in Aztec, loved the job, loved driving around, red P plates, different kinds, feeling really important because you're consulting on the big questions. That's kind of what you have in your head. But then you realize that actually decisions are getting made for reasons a lot bigger than like the shopper panel insights that you are bringing over to them. And you're just very intrigued. It's like, I did this great presentation, this lovely deck. And what happened after that? What did you end up doing? Did my basket penetration analysis save the day for you? So I kind of realized, okay, well, I want to understand what happens more on the other side. And Arnott's was a great company to go to because locally based, so more of the strategy and decision-making is here. Iconic brands, I mean, without a doubt. And you had Michelle Foley on your podcast recently who I think said the same thing, that Tim Tam was what got her over. Absolutely. And they had a category analyst position, which was probably the natural jumping point for someone who had a bit of a data background. And came over and realized, there's this thing called, revenue and profit and operational constraints. And wow, maybe the shopper isn't just the only thing that drives the decisions here.
There's a breadth to business, right? And I think it's not until you're in the business that you see that. I think FMCG is quite interesting because there is end to end, generally, and a lot of other companies are slightly narrower than that. But so you had 6 years there, big tier one. From a career point of view, you've made the strategic move into Arnott's to kind of understand, what a business looks like. Is it a case then of you driving your career, or are you in a machine that then just happens for you?
I was extremely fortunate that the leadership team at Arnott's, especially at that time, was really hot on developing talent. So I'll be honest, I probably took a little bit more of a backseat than I otherwise should have. And it was a bit similar to what you were saying the other day, Mike, where you look at your boss and think, that's the job I want. And right, let's sit back and wait for it to happen. So yeah, look, I was working hard at the job. It probably wasn't as much of a grand plan as I would have liked. Opportunities came up and I took them. I think the one thing that made a difference is I was really hungry to drive my development. So even if there wasn't a grand plan of where I wanted to go, if there was something new or interesting to learn, I had the curiosity to go after it. And I think that was probably what made the difference between, the the development sessions once a month, nothing happens, versus, okay, now you understand a P&L, you've been working hard at this, and by the way, there's this Woolworths promo manager gig that's come up, and maybe you haven't thought about it, but this could be something really good for you. Yeah, that kind of thing.
That's a really good point, Gray. I think seeking the development opportunity, even in a business like that, is really important. And one of the things that I was intrigued, and probably when you very first came onto my radar, was when you won the Joe Berry Award. And that's a phenomenal award to win. So I think we haven't talked a lot about Joe Berry in the pod. So I think it's worth spending a little time explaining to listeners, what is the Joe Berry Award? How did you win it? Because you were at Arnott's at the time, and what role did Arnott's play in getting you into that program?
So it comes back to the leadership culture again. It was Hamish McClay, I remember, was the category lead at the time. And he sails past my desk one day, chucks this leaflet down and says, I want you to stick your head into this thing.
Yeah,
it was this Joe Berry Award. I'd heard of it, but it always felt like something that other people did because it's an industry award. Other people win it. This is not something that one does not simply win the Joe Berry Award. But they had a question. It was about what is the future of Australian food manufacturing? And at the time, the Aussie dollar was skyrocketing versus the US dollar, and everyone was feeling the pinch especially if you're an exporting business. And yeah, it was just something that we picked up, and I looked at it and I got interested in it and I got obsessed with it. And every evening digging into it, reading the topics, and then to the point of the leadership culture, sort of the other senior leaders are, what are you doing? This seems really interesting. And then you build an internal network off the back of that. And then after many, many months, I submitted the essay, didn't think anything about it, got the call back to do the presentation round. And that was just the coolest experience I'd had in my career. And to that point, you are standing at the front of this room with 20 senior executives who are absolutely grilling you on your topic and questions like that. And they're taking shots at each other as well. So I think maybe it was Bernie Brooks who's like, oh, we all know that Woolies and Coles like to price gouge in the market. If you were the ACCC, what would you be doing to rein them in? And I'm thinking, well, there's Woolies and Coles representatives sitting over there, so we're going to have to navigate this one a bit diplomatically. But just after fortunate enough to win, and for me, that kind of exploded a sense of what you could do if you stuck your mind to it. Because that's what it was. It was patience and application and polish and seeing the result at the end of it.
Well, it's hundreds of people entered the Joe Berry Award, and effectively it's an award for young leadership talent within the FMCG and retail industries. The process you described there, it's arduous. You've got to put a lot of energy and effort into writing an essay against a series of topics. I've been part of the judging panel, so as I think you subsequently have been as well, Graham, you end up reading a lot of essays, and the quality is generally very high. And then you go through this process, and ultimately someone's selected the winner, and to their ability to analyze an issue or a challenge and communicate that effectively to various groups of people through the way. It's not easy, but it's so worth doing. I'm a massive fan of it, and it does accelerate development of the people involved. And there's only one winner, but everybody gets who participates, I think, is a winner in some, which sounds very cliche, but they do. A winner in terms of their own development. But hats off to you to actually winning the whole thing. That was fantastic. Did it light a spark for you? Because your next move was quite an interesting one. You kind of left the country, left Arnott's, and invested in an MBA at Harvard, which is pretty cool. How did it happen?
It was probably something that was always on the radar because my dad had done executive education there in his career, and he came back foaming at the mouth about what an amazing experience it was. So it had always been ticking on, but it was again that thing that other people do this. It's not something that you do. But after winning the Joe Berry Award, you start to think, okay, well, what else can you do if you put your mind to it? So that was the point where I decided, okay, maybe it's time to give this MBA a shot, because one thing I really appreciated from the Joe Berry Award is getting outside of your functional silo and your industry silo. You're thinking about a topic on a much broader level, thinking about supply chain, finance, things that you don't see as, I was a shelf manager at the time. And I thought, okay, well, the MBA is the logical extension of that. I knew I wanted to take my career internationally. And what I didn't mention when we first spoke is I actually applied to Stanford first. So I had no idea how the application process worked. I knew you did this thing called the GMAT, which is an entrance exam. You do an application, write an essay, send it off, happy days. So did the GMAT, bombed it, did it again, bombed it again, but slightly less bombing this time. Chucked together an application. It was probably poorly thought through, I would say. Sent it to Stanford, got roundly rejected, licked my wounds for 6 months, and then thought, okay, well, what really went on here? And then you sort of do a little bit of deeper thinking, like, really, why? Why do you want this MBA? What do you want to get out of it? And how badly do you really want it? Because the application process is so arduous that it really sort of tests that resolve all the way through. So after doing a little bit more thinking, reflecting, I thought, okay, Harvard is probably a better match of what I want to do, general management, international, not so much the tech West Coast side of things. Killed myself with the GMAT, which is this entrance exam you have to do for the MBA. It's this 5-hour all-in exam. It's a verbal component, quant component, reasoning, difficult questions and a strict time limit on it. Got the score I wanted, put together the application, articulated the candidacy. You have to do an interview, which is pretty nerve-wracking as well. And then eventually got the good results. And that's, then you have to make this big decision. You're uprooting your life. I had a girlfriend at the time, now wife. And what does life look like for her on the other end? What is she going to do? So, I mean, that's the end-to-end step 1 through 3 process for heading on over there, I guess.
That's fantastic. What you said right at the beginning of that story is, I think, really poignant. You think of these things are often not for you. Somebody else does Harvard MBA. Somebody else does Joe Berry. And the reality is, no, they don't. People do it. And that people could be you. You've just got to think about why. And then if the why makes sense, then how? And give it your best shot. And you'll be surprised at the amount of people that would support you as well, which clearly happened within Arnott's for Joe Berry and then into Harvard. So tell us what it's like. You know, I imagine everyone's got a view, rose tinted or otherwise, of what life would be like at Harvard. You know, is there a typical day?
It is a very surreal place. So the way everything works in Harvard is with the case method. You are given a 15-page case study on the particular topic, the day before, 2 days before. It's typically a company at an inflection point, and a CEO has to make a decision, and it's there to help explain a concept to you, like anything from accounting to strategy to ethics and leadership, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll spend maybe an hour the night before preparing the case and having something intelligent to say about it. And then the next day you will go into class, and you have to imagine something that looks a bit like the Colosseum. It's this big horseshoe-shaped classroom.
Right.
Professor comes in the middle. As soon as the second hand ticks over 9 a.m., boom, door shut, you're ready to go. Professor does like this maybe a little 10-minute introduction, and then cold call. And they'll say, Mike, what do you think about the CEO and what do you think they should do? And then you will share your perspective on what you think. And the reason they do the cold call is to make sure that you've done the work, because if you haven't read the case, haven't prepped, they don't let you go. They will keep grilling you and embarrassing you in front of the class as a warning to the others. And then what will happen is they'll say, okay, so who disagrees with Mike? Who thinks they should do something else? And that's the point where the rest of the class start putting up their hands and sharing their perspectives. And this is the unique thing about Harvard, because it's not a lecture-based class. It is about deeply understanding the case and the concepts that are involved and having something intelligent to say about it. It's absolutely nerve-wracking. It's the most fun you'll have in your life. Yeah.
And fantastic. And is life living on campus or?
Yeah, living on campus. So the thing they talk about in business school is the MBA triangle. And one side is social, the other side is academics, and one side is career. And they say, pick 2 of the 3. You can't do all 3. And then the rest of your life outside of classes like that is really how you are recruiting for the industry or what it is that you want to do, or socializing and looking to meet people. And honestly, in some cases, people go there to find long-term partners. This is kind of the...
Really?
Yeah. No,
wow.
It's true. They talk about Thanksgiving is what they call the turkey drop, which is when everyone who comes in with a long-distance relationship then realizes this is too hard to maintain and goes back home and ends things. And then the last semester is what they call the fire sale, which is anyone who's still single and wants to find a partner. It goes time.
That's the time.
Yeah. So that's the social side of the triangle. But then based on the course of the year, depending on when recruiting season is, sometimes those priorities can change. But you meet incredible people as well. So the part of the selection process is about having a diversity of people internationally from different industries, different functions. So you will be at some social event with your section, meeting the airline guy from Colombia, the New York consultant, the Midwestern Navy SEAL, just people you just don't interact with on a daily basis. And that's part of the learning and the understanding that you get out of the MBA.
And you were the Aussie FMCG guy.
Yep, the token guy over there. That's right, yeah. They love Australians in Harvard because we counter the foreign quota and speak English.
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit easier.
Exactly right.
What did you think the Harvard MBA would do for you?
I went in there wanting to accelerate my career and to take it international. People have different motivations. Generally, people choose to do the MBA because they are trying to make some big shift in their career and need this as an inflection point to help them get to where they want to do. So that was kind of what I had in mind. In terms of exactly what that looked like, I was still trying to figure out. It turned out that marketing was really the sort of strategic area that I was interested in looking for because typically in US consumer products, marketing is the strategic lead of the organization, and that is where I really wanted to be. Did an internship in General Mills, loved it. Minneapolis would have been a little bit tricky for my wife, and then eventually went into Beam Suntory Spirits in Chicago. So the marketing step that I wanted to do in a part of America that I absolutely loved. And as kind of the first step from there, and then figure out what that would look like beyond that.
Okay. Yeah. And when you'd finished and graduated with your MBA, you came back to Australia. Was it the accelerator in terms of career that you expected?
This is probably the biggest thing that people have to understand. The MBA is not the golden passport that I think maybe it was 40, 50 years ago. It is a way of unlocking your future potential and learning a way to think that will make your career a lot more meaningful and open a lot more doors for you in the future. But from day one, you're not stepping out into the corner office, especially if you're doing a functional shift, an industry shift, or a geography shift. There's a lot that you have to learn from the beginning. So even in my time with Beam Suntory in Chicago, and then again with Arnott's back in Australia, being a marketer again, there's just some rote basics that you have to learn from the bottom. And that was probably a little bit of unlearning I had to do from the MBA because I came out of there, all heat and vinegar and ready to go and tackle the directorship level. There was just some really good foundations that I got in those companies, which I think are really paying off now together with the MBA. So I'd say that the role I am in now is probably the point where I really feel the stuff that I learned in the MBA being useful. But from day one, the way it teaches you to think is useful at any point in your career.
I think MBAs... I think a lot of the schools oversell or sell the wrong things, actually. I think therefore there's an expectation when you have your MBA that there is this instant accelerator. You're adding X $1,000 to your salary because you're going to pick up a much bigger role. And I think that's really false. I think it's a really silly expectation. The reality is it teaches you, as you say, how to think. And that's a lifetime of career payback. So they should be much more smart, I think, about how they actually pitch that. It's an all-of-career investment that's going to pay back over years and decades. And in turn, that might create a financial gain, but it will, back to our whole point about enabling someone to get the most out of their career over time. MBAs can do that, but you've got to see it much more holistically.
You are bang on. And I think the irony of the MBA, it teaches you how companies think and position themselves. But we don't have the reflection as MBA candidates to realize that the MBA schools themselves are peddling a product. And no MBA school had a great a promotional campaign saying, yeah, come with us and do 5 years of making PowerPoint slides for an ungrateful consulting company before you unlock the big time in your career. It's not the one wild and precious life that they like to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. So you came back to Arnott, into marketing. That was the strategic space you wanted to be. There were some fundamentals you needed to lock in. And that's when I approached you. So apologies for Arnott, but I felt that Graham had another calling. And I spoke to you about Mutti back in 2021. Take us through your thought process when I talked to you. I'm curious because I've got my views, but what did you think when I spoke to you about Mutti?
So the first piece was, what is this brand? Now, my wife was a huge fan of the brand. She made a lasagna one day and I said, what have you done to this? This is amazing. And she started to get that crazy look in her eye. It's this brand I've just discovered through a recipe influencer. Like, you put it in anything, it tastes amazing. I was like, yeah, I've actually did not know that a dish could taste this good. So we were big fans of the brand. And then one day I was actually shopping for the passata at Maroubra Junction, poking around to try to find what I was looking for. And this kid comes up to me and says, did you know my mum's the boss of this company? I said, oh, really? And looked around and there's Trish. We started having some dialogue. I was like, oh, yeah, and the product's been out of stock. And then she started grilling me on exactly when the passata had been out of stock and for how long, and upsold me on a 560 gram organic, if I remember right. So I was kind of primed a little bit. Okay, here's this brand. And then when you approached, I think at the time I was looking for an opportunity where I could bring a little bit more of my whole skill set. Because Tier 1 is great, I think, for learning processes and ways of doing things. But you are kind of stuck in a lane, I guess. And it's very hard to branch out of that or to bring a little bit of whole business thinking, I would say. So here's Mutti, who, they have sales, they have marketing, they have a growth journey, they don't have category. And they're big believers in category. They just are not experts on category. And how do we roll this out with the retailer? And I thought, oh, okay, well, I can do that. Put myself forward, got the job. And that was a very different kind of role to what I'd been used to, because you are the expert. You are the only person in the company, not just the country, who understands category. And I remember for the first few weeks, I was asking permission. Can I do this? Can I do that? And Trish and Daniela, why are you asking us? You're the expert. Just go and tell us what you think you need to do. And this was just a whole different way of thinking about what your role looks like in a particular company. And turned out I loved it. You know, I didn't think I had an entrepreneurial bone in my body, but actually when you are in there making the calls and seeing the impact and copying the fault when things don't go wrong, that's a very nice feeling to have.
That level of accountability is unique to a smaller business. The exposure, the impact, the accountability for good and for bad is for the right person at the right time in their career, phenomenal. And most people who, in fact, I think everybody we place into the Mutti business has probably gone through a similar experience. They, moving out of the well-oiled big machine to actually stand in an exposed way, really testing yourself and learning as well. What was Mutti like when you joined then? And what was your remit was to grow category. So I would love your take on why it's been such a big success so far.
Because everything Mutti does is about growing the category, whether they realize it or not. And it starts from the product itself. We were talking a bit before we came in, but the singular focus of Mutti and our CEO, Mr. Mutti, is about how you make the product better. How can you get a better quality product, a better tasting product? Because that is how you build success over the long period. He tells me the brands that are investing in product are the ones who are succeeding, and especially in an environment like this. And this is quite a reversal of how I'd been trained to think, which is almost defending your portfolio from the endless salami slicing of value engineering. Like, we can make these little changes, the consumer won't notice. Well, maybe they don't notice the change from A to B, but they sure do notice the change from A to E or G, right? So that's number one, is a better quality product that demonstrably tastes better. Two is the category in which we operate, canned tomatoes and tomato commodities and pasta sauces. There are so many meals that require this product and use it in a big way that you can really taste the difference in your final dish with what it is that you were doing. So with those sort of foundations for success, then you start to implement the business framework over it, which is, okay, now we can charge a premium for this. And you can charge a 25, 30, 40% markup. But for a product that typically costs $1.50, you're only asking someone to shell out about another 50 cents to have something that makes an enormous difference to the end occasion of the consumer. And I think all of those things pulling together is like, okay, so we've got a great story here. What they lacked when I came in was the language and the frameworks to articulate this in a way to the retailer and influence some of the things like shelf listings, macro space alignment, all of that kind of thing. And what I really enjoyed about the role is we did not have tons of data. They had scan data, fantastic. We bought panel data, like good old fashioned IRI home panel, not sexy stuff, but really good workhorse stuff. We bought planogramming capabilities so we could build shelves. And that was all we needed to get macro space realignment, shelf gains, 22 new listings, and eventually in 2022, Supplier of the Year with Woolworths, which a category was a part of that, definitely not the main part of it. That's all Daniela's credit. There is the head of sales with Mutti. But with some really basic stuff, a great category story, and being forced to be scrappy with what you have and clarify the narrative rather than sort of 200-page decks of every propeller head data that's out there. We just got some really, really big wins that made a big difference to where the company certainly is now.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, you, after a couple of years, Graham, and things move very quickly within Mutti, it is a super fast business. You then moved to Italy. Mm-hmm. So to lead a very strategic BU for the organization globally, pasta sauces. Now that's things are starting to accelerate for you. So how did the move to Italy happen? And hey, how's life in Italy?
Arrivederci, Australia. See. The one thing that I think was the question mark over Mutti when I came in is what does the future career look like? Because it's not a well-trod pathway of dozens of different headcount opportunities that you can work through in a very ordered way. But you sort of had this idea that, okay, a company that is growing this quickly, something's going to come up. And it probably came up a little bit sooner than we thought, but the company identified that pasta sauces is a category that they wanted to go and really dominate and maybe hadn't had the success that they really expected in the past, considering competitive advantage in tomato and Italianicity. So they set up a dedicated business unit, which is single-mindedly focused towards how we unlock success in this category. And at the time, I'd been doing a little bit of work with Italy, and the gentleman who'd been asked to lead this initiative sort of came across my name and thought, okay, well, I wanted to have a salesperson and a marketing person. You could do both. Great. We'll just have one person doing this. Thank you very much. Are you interested in coming over to Italy? And at the time, I thought, oh, goodness me, feels like we've only just got back here from Australia. I've got a 2-year-old son. And you think, actually, this is probably the right time. This is actually a very good time. It only gets harder when the kids get older. So, discussion as a family, you've got to make the decision as a family. Because if the home front is not locked and loaded and motivated and happy, it's not a sustainable move. My wife's a teacher, which is quite lucky because that's quite a geographically mobile profession. So I think, within 6 months of that conversation, I had moved over. And you are then at that point effectively reconstructing your life bit by bit on the other end of the planet. And it is hugely rewarding. It is extremely challenging. And I would say now, only after 18 months, we're feeling, okay, we've got this, feeling okay.
How's Italian?
Sì, mi impegno molto per imparare la lingua. Really putting a lot of effort to try to learn the language. There is not a lot of English in Italy in general, Parma especially. But from day one, is something I really wanted to crack. I'd spent time in Switzerland as a teenager and didn't really try to learn German there. And you just realize you're not independent. You have this list of people who you need to call to speak on your behalf when you need something done. And it's not ideal. So, really committed to the learning the language from day dot. I remember from the day I arrived, marching out the front door to, I'm going to go have a conversation with someone today. And you go into the little cafes and there's the barista there and you start having a chat with them in whatever broken form you can. And to the point where, some of them appreciate it, some of them don't. I remember one of them asking, hey, don't you have any friends in Italy? And Actually, I don't. I still can't go back into that cafe.
Yeah, that's fine.
Pop my collar when I walk past.
Yeah.
But
Brilliant, fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about what you're doing at the moment. So where does this kind of global role fit in to the business?
I would say that has really been up to me to define. So in the same theme of what we were talking about before, that it's not a very well-developed, super oiled in the same way that a tier one would be. This is kind of the first crack at having a business unit like this. So effectively, day dot, you were trying to figure out how you were going to plug into the rest of the organization around this. So you frame it up quite simply. We are here to unlock success for all of the markets. And when I came over day one, my direct report's walking out the door. She's resigned to go somewhere else. Okay, cool. 6 weeks later, the guy who brought me over there has resigned to go take a CEO role. Okay, cool. So now we're backfilling both ends. We had product in market that probably wasn't performing the way we necessarily wanted it to. We had a couple of projects, but not a lot of real tangible stuff. So it's really from day dot, like, okay, what are we going to do here? And started off by getting at least just some basic consumer insight, like who's buying a pasta sauce? Why is it different from a canned tomato or a passata? What is this convenience occasion? What are they looking for? What's our point of difference? And then starting to build out a much broader set of processes and things that are needed to make the markets give them what they need. And this is where I think having the tier one disciplines help, because things like innovation gate process, S&OP, demand planning, these things exist in probably quite a cumbersome and restrictive way in many tier one organizations. But the heart of what they are trying to do is right. It would be a nice idea to know what we're producing, what markets need, how much stock we have on hand, and when we should schedule the production. Maybe we can do something like this with a couple of monthly meetings in an Excel template. Is it perfect? No. It's a step forward. And you start to build this success that way. And I've been really thrilled because we've doubled our growth since we've come in. We've gone from under-delivering budget to over-delivering budgets. We've got some really exciting stuff coming through next year. And still just a heap of things that we need to do in the next 6 months, 12 months to really feel like we're on top of everything this category needs.
Great journey so far, Graham. Where does it go? What's the success look like for this business unit? Is it have you got targets? Do you set the targets, or does Mr. Mutti set them for you? How does that?
No, Mr. Mutti, to his credit, is he will trust you and let you run and define success and achieve success in the way that you think is right, which I think makes a very big difference from a lot of other family-owned sort of entrepreneurial companies, which it can sometimes be a little bit, they could be sometimes a bit more forthright in what they are looking for. Our goal is to be the number one premium tomato pasta sauce brand in the world. I absolutely fervently believe that we are the brand that can get there because we have this competitive advantage in tomatoes that others, it takes years to build up that kind of capability. So for me, it is not about being the biggest brand in the world. It is about doing the same thing that we did with canned tomatoes, where we identify that consumer who is happy to pay a little bit more for something that is substantially better. And I think I see a real gap in the category for this, because I think typically a lot of the offerings tend to be, it's convenient, gets the job done, the kids will probably eat it, you probably won't feel great serving it up. But what is that gap for something that is going to really give you something where you think, maybe it's not as good as something I could have made myself, but it's pretty damn close. And I will serve this with a smile on my face. And I will look forward to Wednesday evenings, because I will be able to serve this up and not worry about the cooking and the 20 minutes that I have to actually prepare this. And I can enjoy my time with my family with a smile on my face. This is the pain point that we are trying to solve.
Fantastic. And is the MBA coming to life a bit more now?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Now, when you're in a role like this, where there's not a lot of stuff defined, you have got to take an all business approach to this kind of thing. If you have a proposition that maybe isn't performing in the market the way you would like, it's nice to be able to track back the root cause analysis of that to maybe a challenge you have in the industrial side of things, instead of maybe, just putting out an ad campaign for something that isn't necessarily the solution to the problem that you have. So that for me has been super gratifying. But even just the ability to step into a new situation and get to grips with it in fairly short order and figure out where we need to tackle it. Grateful every day for what that education has brought.
Moving to the final section of the pod, Graham, advice. We've touched on MBAs, a bit of a theme through this. If someone's listening to this thinking, I find that quite inspiring, whether they get to Harvard or Stanford or there are many other business schools and MBAs out there, but do you think there's a right time in career to do an MBA?
The thinking I had is that by the time you need it, it's often too late, because a lot of the schools will kind of prefer to take people who are between 25, 30, 31, 32. It's not to say that there's not other options out there. But my thinking was kind of, okay, thinking ahead for what I want to do. The sooner I get it, the more I can start to get the benefit out of it. I would say in general, if you are looking to make a career shift into a different industry, a different function, or an acceleration, then it is something worth considering, because it can be that inflection point, not even just necessarily to teach you the skills, but to help make those connections, to get you on the recruiting line of sight for a lot of these companies, to help unlock the networking that you need. If you wanted to do a startup, it's very helpful to have an MBA to make the connection with the funding, the VCs, the angel investors and stuff like that. So there's probably an age to get it. But I'd say it's more about when you think in that career, you want to make some kind of shift, and whether this is the thing that can help you get there.
Yeah. And we've talked about the lifelong payback. So I think it's, there's everybody have their own reason, but that's good advice. Second question on I guess reflecting on your life and career so far. You've lived in 10 countries, lots of moves. There's a lot of benefits from that. And again, somebody might be thinking, right, I want to kind of start moving around. I'd love to experience different cultures, different places, and have that kind of upside. But there's some watch outs too. Mm-hmm. What would they be?
If I go back to something I said earlier, you've got to make sure that the home front is locked and loaded when you get over there. Because my understanding, talking to a lot of people who've done this, is that typically if your partner is not happy, if your kids are not happy, it's kind of game over at that point. You don't have a sustainable relocation on your hands. So you have to give a real thought about what this means for you as a family, not just for you as a career. And if you can get that sweet spot where the kids benefit, where your partner has career options and an advantage there, as well as for you in your career, then you're kind of in a good place. And even with all of that, rebuilding your life step by step on the other side of the world, it's not always so easy. Cultures are very different. They do things differently. I remember vividly when I arrived, driving to the supermarket at 7 a.m. because I was too scared to go on Italian roads any later than that, and standing in the fresh section to see how are people shopping the groceries here, because, they put gloves on, they stick it in a little bag, they weigh it. You don't weigh it at the checkout. You just have to understand that everything like that has to be thought through and figured out from the beginning. But then you get to a stage where you think, this is when you get the rewards. And, I remember as another time coming back from a social event from the company where I'd interacted entirely in Italian with everyone there, and just thinking, I did not think I would ever be able to do this in my life. Like, this was just something that Europeans do, not people like myself. And that, I think, is the reward on the other side of it.
Great. So finally, loved talking about your career and all these inflection points and learnings. But when you look forward, what does your career have in store for you?
If I was looking back at my MBA application before I came in here, and sort of the stuff I was writing when I was 30, regional general management. I want to be the person who's interacting with all of these different cultures. This is something that I really appreciate with my background, and having a little bit of that cultural capability as well. Being the person who is thinking cross-functionally and being able to talk supply chain, finance, just that richness of the interaction is what I really appreciate with my role where I am and where I want it to be. I think the thing that's been interesting, and I probably wouldn't have thought of if we hadn't crossed paths, is what that entrepreneurial side looks like, what it looks like in smaller companies, a little scrappier, a little less well-oiled. There's something really quite addictive about that when you are coming and bringing capability and seeing that impact with little things that can make a really big difference, not just to your area, but how the company operates as a whole. So there's a part of me that thinks there could be more of an entrepreneurial bent for me down the track. But who knows? I mean, you can have what's that saying? A plan is the thing that you deviate from. So we'll see what happens over the next few years and beyond.
Wonderful. Graham, that's been awesome. Really enjoyed the conversation and just learning a bit about parts of your life that I've always kind of wanted to ask, really. And so thank you for being so open, honest, directing us a lot of inspiring pieces within there, which I'm sure our listeners will appreciate. So thank you.
No, not at all. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Great. We're recording this in November 2024, but uploading in March 2025. So who knows what's going on in the world between now and then. Hopefully we still have a world. In practical careers sense, we'll have landed our 2025 salary guides. So it is the most sought after asset we produce. If you haven't got your copy when you're listening to this, jump on the website or contact any of the AXR team. You need to have that. Thank you again, Graham. And from me, Mike Dickson of AXR Recruitment and Search, thank you for listening. We'll be back soon with some more incredible leaders and insights to help your future in sales and marketing.
We hope you enjoyed today's podcast from AXR Recruitment and Search. We're passionate about helping you get the most out of your sales and marketing career. Keep listening as we bring you more career insights and advice from Australia's inspiring sales and marketing leaders. See you next time on Your Future in Sales and Marketing.